He says he's never met a more positive person in his life than himself. And I couldn't agree more. My next guest on Different Strokes had a high-flying corporate career, and he was on track to become the CEO of a Fortune 500 company. But his dreams came crashing when he was diagnosed with a rare autoimmune disease at 33 that left him completely crippled by the time he turned 40. 8 years down the line today, he's a motivational speaker, a best-selling author, a life coach, and a co-founder of a startup. His dream is to touch 1 million lives positively in his lifetime. My name is Deeksha Sethi, and you're listening to Different Strokes. Please welcome Ramgopal Vallath. And this is his story from ouch to oops. Since a very morning person and a not so morning person are trying to have a conversation, I hope we try to make it work. And I've also figured out what I'm going to address you, how I'm going to address you without sounding too formal. So I was thinking about it, since you're not comfortable with sir, and I won't be able to address you any other ways. I think I would, let's settle it RG. Is that okay?
Oh yeah, perfect.
Okay. There's also a Hindi G in that in my head, so the respect is there. Okay, fine. Thank you so much for agreeing to do this. It's a great honor and pleasure. I've heard a lot of your TED Talks, and I, for one, obviously needed to hear a lot of things that you say and break that cycle of procrastination and get to work, really. I mean, how much can one person think? But tell me about your journey from ouch to oops, and why oops. It's an interesting nomenclature. So please go ahead.
Thank you. First of all, thank you for having me here. It's my pleasure. Why ouch to oops? Well, actually, there is a story behind it, and the story is written actually in the book. But yes. Let me give you a quick 2-minute summary, if that's okay. So my life was actually flying high. I was at 34. I was a young chief operating officer in the telecom industry in the country, possibly the youngest to reach that level by that age. I had dreams of becoming a Fortune 500 company CEO by the age of 45, a global CEO. And everything seemed to be set for that. I had fantastic qualification, IIT Madras, XLRI, a really, really scorching career.
Yeah.
And then suddenly life completely took a U-turn for the worse. And I was afflicted by this autoimmune condition. And the autoimmune condition really made me start losing my balance. My hands and legs became weaker. My fingers became, I was not able to articulate my fingers. And overall quality of life started deteriorating. And by the age of 41, I had a fever at that time, and then it completely spiked the condition and I became totally immobile. I was paralyzed. I couldn't lift my hands or legs. I couldn't even move a finger properly. And I couldn't keep my eyes open. My voice started piping. And that is when actually the condition was really diagnosed as an autoimmune condition. And I went through 2 years of extremely difficult time when I could barely walk. I could barely stand, actually. I would keep swaying, tripping and falling every once in a while. I couldn't button up my shirt. In fact, I would go on tours and I will have to do the buttoning up myself in a hotel room. It would take me 90 minutes to button up 6 buttons of my shirt. I couldn't type. I couldn't hold a pen. And I was on steroids, very strong amount of prednisone, actually, which would keep this autoimmune condition under somewhat of a check. Then I went and did a clinical trial in the US, which totally, not 100%, it completely reset my body. It rebooted my body in some sense because it killed all the entire immune system and regenerated the immune system using my own stem cells. The condition was substantially reduced. Though by the time I had irreversibly lost a lot of muscles. And muscles, once they actually waste away, it is not possible to grow them back.
Right, yeah.
But I was 90% okay. And then I went about rebuilding my body, intense amount of workouts. And I wrote my first book from the hospital bed in Chicago.
Wow.
I had to use voice to text software because I couldn't type. That is a totally wacky science fiction for children. So then when I wrote my second book, that was, and that book was called From Ouch to Oops. I'm sorry, the first book was called Oops, the Mighty Gurgle. It's about this character, traveling pumpkin from the future, evolved pumpkin called Oops, who comes to save humanity from this.
That's interesting.
And that book became a nice hit among kids. And then I went on to become a motivational speaker, right? And I managed to turn my entire life around and made it into a success. The entire setback became a success because I could actually talk about it and I could make people feel more positive, more resilient, and give them tips in terms of what could hardware resilience and positivity.
Right.
So when I wrote the second book, it was From Ouch to Oops, because the ouch moment of my life, I wrote this book called Oops.
Yeah.
Which turned around my life.
Right.
Story of From Ouch to Oops.
Right. And you became an author by chance. So oops. Okay.
It always dormant in me that I had to write a book, but this is a great opportunity actually. This break I got, and I just did that.
And why a children's book? Very interesting thought, though. Why that? Where did you get the inspiration from?
I used to spend loads of time with my kids when they're growing up, telling them completely absurd stories.
Okay.
In fact, even now, maybe about 16, 17 years later, the high point in my kids' life, one of the high points in their lives is this story which I told them completely off the cuff. And I kept on inventing characters as I told the story. Even now, they actually remember distinctly some of those pieces in that story, So I love writing absurd stuff.
Right.
And kids obviously love absurd
things. Yeah.
The more absurd it is, the more awesome it is, right?
Yeah. I'm raising a 6-year-old and I'm going to be 6 soon. So yeah, I know how absurd they can be. Yeah, sure. So it's very interesting, but I do want to go back a little to the time when you had a high-flying career and you were suddenly stopped dead in your tracks and you discovered the autoimmune disease. And obviously the journey was very long and very painful for you as well. And it went downhill for you for some time, I'm assuming. So how did you cope with that entire, the speed and the change of scenario suddenly? What was going on in your mind? And how did you cope with it?
So I think the one person who stood side by side with me, holding my hand literally, and making sure I was okay all the time was my wife.
Right.
Without her, nothing would have been possible. No? So I talk about my great resurrection and my resilience, etc. Without her being there, I would be nothing actually.
Right.
So that is number one. The love that she gave. And she would actually, when I was going through this, I would try to walk and my footsteps would be, she would keep listening to my footsteps, the sound that they make on the ground as she walked next to me. And the moment I lost my balance, she would know because she would be listening to the rhythm of the footsteps.
Right.
And she would reach out and hold my hand.
Wow.
And literally, that was what happened. But figuratively, that was what was happening my entire life. So she was there. And the kids, the kids made a big difference, right? I would spend, every day I would make sure I spend a couple of hours with the kids.
Right.
Telling them stories or spending time with them and we used to have fun. So the one thing I told myself when I was going through this entire thing is that come what may, I would not lose my sense of humor.
Right.
If I walk into a room, I wanted the room to be slightly happier because I'm there in the room compared to when I'm not there. So I would always make it a point to be cheerful, crack some joke, make people happy. And at work, I would take on a lot of additional responsibilities. In fact, I was director of operations for HP India.
Right.
And I took on the entire Six Sigma function for that division. I took on the entire project management, which is a huge piece. So that I could be, my mind would be focused on doing things rather than wallowing in self-pity.
Right.
So that was sorry.
No, please go on.
So that was a very basic thing I told myself. I'm not going to ask, why did this happen to me?
Right.
I'm not going to wallow in self-pity of why me? Or I'm not going to let my mind linger on the problems I'm facing. I would be constantly seeking solutions and doing action to seek solution. So the moment you are focused on action, your brain is already triggering dopamine.
Right.
And that keeps you happy. And after some time, that keeps you, then that happiness that you get when you're doing that becomes addictive. And over a period of time, you start focusing only on the solution part and forget to focus on the problem. That's what happened.
Right. But RG, tell me something, this kind of thinking and rewiring of the brain actually takes a lot of work. And it's not easy to come by, because especially in times of adversity, you're bound to feel a little low, and people do wallow in self-pity. It's difficult to pull yourself out of that dark hole. But you did mention that you obviously, your kids were around, you had a great support system with your wife, and that obviously helped you pull you out of that adversity. Did you at any point also feel compelled or had a sense of duty that I have to do this for them, if not myself?
So my next book is on parenting, by the way. And one of the first chapters in that book is about role modeling.
Right.
When I was growing up, my father has role modeled so much of positivity to me. And he's gone through some very challenging phases in his professional career. And he's handled all of them so beautifully, the way he's taken the downturns and converted them to opportunities. So I've seen that happening, and I've also seen my mother, who is extremely happy all the time. And I've seen how she manages to draw energy from those around her, and building lovely networks of support, strong connect with people around her. I've never seen her down. So having observed this, it was a natural inclination for me to be more on the positive side. But what did help me was, as I said, the bias towards action.
Right.
The bias towards doing things rather than sitting and feeling bad. And you always start with maybe very easy, small things to do. And each time you achieve that, you feel really wonderful because you set a goal for yourself and you achieved it. And then you go ahead and set a slightly bigger goal, and then a slightly bigger goal, and a slightly bigger goal. So when I could not walk, for example, I would always, I used to have these relapses, during this attack. Every once in a while, I would become really weak, and my toe would start dropping, and I wouldn't be able to hold up my foot because the ankle would have no articulation ability, and that would make me trip and fall. But what I would say is that I would walk for 100 meters and do that 100 meters that day, and I would feel good.
Right.
And I would set that same 100 meters as target for the next 1 or 2 weeks. I would say that at the end of 2 weeks, I would go up to 150 to 200 meters. And then I would do that. And I would set these targets for the next, let's say, 6 weeks, 8 weeks, 10 weeks. And each week, the target going slightly up. And I would keep building up myself to be able to touch and beat those targets every one of those days. And that actually makes you feel positive, happy, and wanting to do more.
Right.
That's the way I handle that, actually.
Right. No, it's amazing how, you've managed to turn it around completely, and you actually sound like a superhero to me, because a lot of people tend to give up. It's not easy. It's really not easy to come out of such a difficult time. And you were what, 34 at that time, if I'm not wrong?
When it started, I was 34.
Right.
By the time I reached the worst point in my health, I think it was about 41. So it was a 7-year slow decline, actually.
Right. And you were at the prime of your career as well. And I remember in one of your TED Talks, you had mentioned that, you were flying high at that time, but then at 41, you were sacked. So was it because of the illness or your physical condition? What was the reason that this decline happened?
So I was actually sacked for a completely different thing. And there was something I had no control over.
Okay.
There was an unethical practice which was going on in my organization. I had just joined about 3 months before this was discovered, and the issue was going on for about 7 years. So I was one of the persons who actually helped unearth the whole thing, and then but that particular issue had a lot of risk for the organization.
Okay.
And they had to show that the senior-most person in the organization had to be sacked. So I was sacked, and it was an extremely unfair thing that happened.
Right.
But
so
again,
a moral standing, basically, somebody had to step down. Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely, yeah.
Right. Okay.
And after I was told I'm being sacked, because I had so much of respect in the system, that I was given an additional 3 months to be there in the system. And nobody knew I was being sacked at that point in time. So everybody thought I was stepping down because of my health. And those 3 months, I ensured that every single aspect of my professional life was done at 100% efficiency. I would not drop a single ball. I owe it to myself as a professional. I more than to the organization, I owe it to myself to do things absolutely right. So I think integrity, the work ethic that I am brought up in, made sure that I didn't want to go and destroy the organization or the work that I had done before.
Right. Right. And when they learned about your condition, obviously, did they start behaving any differently with you? Did they treat you any different, or were they accommodating of the condition that you had?
I don't think they treated me any differently. In fact, from my side, I would keep on taking additional responsibilities.
Was that to prove yourself in a way?
There are two aspects to it. One is proving myself, but that was not really the reason. The real reason was the more my mind was active and occupied with things to do, the less it would wonder to why did this happen to me.
Right.
And I felt good about doing work. And that is the reason I took on additional responsibility.
No, fair enough. Because generally people tend to work doubly hard just to prove to themselves, and also not to give the organizations any reason to complain that because of this is not happening, or you're not performing well, etc. So that happens. But you do work with a lot of organizations as a motivational speaker, right? So what is that one challenge that you see among the workforce or the younger people today? Do you find anything that they struggle with in terms of their commitment towards work, or the way they think? Are they wired to think so positively like you do, for instance, or is there never that point that you're never satisfied. They're never satisfied. And there's a lot of self-dejection that follows. Or what is it that you've experienced?
So I think one of the things, and I don't want to generalize, but I think one of the things that I find in a larger percentage of the population amongst the youngsters today is a lack of gratitude for what they have.
Yeah.
And that leads to an entitled mentality and behavior. So what does gratitude do for you? When you are grateful for what you have, then you are always happy.
Yeah.
Because you've got so much in life from which you think has been a blessing. And hence you try to give your everything to what you have got. So you maximize everything that you have received. And then you try to help others. Right. Because you are grateful for what you have and you want to pass it on, right? Yeah. Now, when that happens, the whole organization and the people around you, the team, everybody is more positive and more happy.
Yes.
Whereas when everything comes a little too easy for you, you don't realize the struggle that people go through to make things, make ends meet or make things happen. And that makes them a lot more entitled in their mindset. Right. So if you don't have gratitude for what you have, then you want more. And you want more and more and more.
So is gratitude the same thing as being content, or are they two different things? Because, sometimes people also think that, if I'm content with what I have, then I'm not pushing myself enough. I'm not challenging myself. I'm not reaching out for bigger goals, etc. Then I'll be stunted. I'll be stagnant in the pond. So how are these two things different?
I think that's a fantastic question. So from my own experience, I can tell you one thing, that being grateful has really no bearing to how much you want to push yourself. So to that extent, maybe you're content with a lot of things that you have, but you also have a goal, which is an enabling, empowering goal, which you want to go after. And I am never content with where I am. I think every day I work maybe 16, 17 hours a day.
Wow.
From morning to night, I'm constantly either thinking about what I should be doing, planning something, researching something, reading something, picking up skill sets, or implementing something.
Right.
And this is because I always kept a lofty target or a goal ahead of me. And today, my goal is to touch 1 million lives positively.
Yes.
Right? And I do everything that I can to make that happen. Right. But am I grateful for what I have? I'm incredibly grateful for what I have.
Right. That's a very interesting thought, actually, moving ahead with a lot of gratitude, but never settling for who you are as an individual, and continue to work on your growth. Because if we don't work on our growth, then we're obviously not improving as an individual, and we're not able to touch more lives like you're trying to do. That's an amazing perspective. I do want to take this opportunity to ask a question for myself. So, and I think a lot of other people will also relate. So how does one deal with procrastination? It's obviously not a capability issue. There's obviously capability, but I think what is lacking is probably one is not driven enough or not motivated enough. That's probably the challenge, that you're not able to shake it off and get to the work. It has to be done. It's going to lead you from point A to point B, and then you are going to feel better about it. You are going to feel happier about it, but yet you're not doing it. So how does that one really deal with that cycle and break it?
No, I completely get you. Okay.
Yeah.
And I also go through this every once in a while. It's not like I'm always always on my toes and going at it and things like that. There are times when I really procrastinate. For example, in this last 1 year of lockdown, before this, I used to walk about 4 to 5 kilometers every day and do yoga in the morning for 1 hour. Okay.
Right.
That is a routine, and it was established. It was going beautifully. Then the lockdown happened, and because of my condition, I'm very, very susceptible to the virus. And if I didn't catch it, then I could have that entire condition which I had, the autoimmune condition, getting triggered again. So I stayed home. Now that ensured my walk did not happen. And I would have actually picked up something. Then my kids came home from the universities, and they were here for about 4 or 5 months.
Okay.
And I wanted to spend time with them. So somehow things went, the routine changed. And I then completely started vegetating without actually doing things. So, and now I am back to getting back to shape. So this is my suggestion for people who are tending to procrastinate. Number one is visualize a goal very clearly. Visualize what you would reach once you reach a goal.
Okay.
For example, if it's a book you want to write, then think of having written that book, it is published, and you're getting adulation from so many readers, and people are saying, wow, fantastic book, or whatever. If it is, you want to lose weight, for example, think of yourself as somebody who's looking smart and trim and fit and really able to run up some 10 floors or whatever, right? So imagine, visualize that, and just feel the power of that visualization. Then break it down to strategies. What are the things that you need to do to get to the goal? And under each strategy, put down, what can I do today?
Okay.
What can I do tomorrow? What can I do? And take one day at a time.
Right.
Put a goal for today and then achieve that goal.
Right.
Starting the journey is always the toughest, right?
Yes.
And you know it. Right? Yeah. So the first step, make it a small step.
Right.
And make sure you do it. And then next day you put a slightly larger step. Like that, you can keep building on it.
Yeah. No, I think that makes a lot of sense, to break down the challenge into smaller, bite-sized, doable actions, which doesn't sound or appear so, insurmountable in your head that you're so daunting that you just don't even want to begin. You're already discouraged before starting. So that, I think, is a very sound piece of advice, to break down the challenge and make it into doable, actionable steps. So thank you for that. Since we were talking about the pandemic, I do want to touch a little bit upon that. So it obviously has rattled a lot of us, right? Emotionally, mentally, financially, physically. A lot of people have been impacted by this huge crisis that the world is seeing right now. But people are slowly and gradually coming back into routine and normalcy setting in for them. But there's obviously still a lot of restlessness. There's obviously still a lot of anxiety about the uncertainty, what's going to happen in the future, how are things going to change, because there is a lot of change still happening. What are the 3 things that you would advise to everybody who's still grappling with this crisis?
So my request would be this, and I know that obviously people have had very varying kind of impact from this. Some people who got very badly impacted, right?
Yes.
In fact, I consult with RamG Foundation. And in the beginning of the pandemic, for the first 2.5 months, we were feeding daily millions and millions of people because they didn't have food.
Right.
There are people starving to death actually because of the lockdown, right? The request I have is that there would be a lot of negative aspects to this. Look at those 2-3 things which could be opportunities in this. For example, if you are forced to stay at home, what are the things that you can do at home which you were not able to do earlier? One could be spending time with family, quality time with family, with your children or with your wife or whatever, right? That could be one part of it. Number 2 could be that you have time now to invest in yourself as a person. Picking up skill sets, picking up knowledge, which can then empower you later on to either expand your career or try out something else or become better at what you do in the profession. So, and invest heavily on yourself, spend time on that. The more, and keep yourself totally occupied. And the more you're occupied, and your mind is occupied doing constructive things, the less it would wander to destructive feelings. And the last point I have is that there's also an opportunity for us to reach out to a lot of people who we don't, because of the hurry-burry in life, because we are always running from work home to office and then back and then to taking care of a lot of things. There's an opportunity to actually reach out to people you love who maybe you've not been always in touch with, and restart some of the relationships or invest in relationships. Speak to your parents, speak to your children if they are not with you. Speak to your siblings, your cousins, your friends from college, and restart and feel that you're part of this wonderful society where there's so many people who are caring for you.
Yeah.
The more you feel that way, the more connected you feel with people around you, the less depressed or dejected you will feel at the situation.
Yeah. I'm so glad you said that, because I think 2020 has definitely allowed us time to slow down and reflect upon how we're moving and in which direction are we really moving, and actually reorder our priorities, because I think we had completely mismatched our priorities.
Yep.
Work was taking over everything and everything else was getting neglected, including our own health, mental and physical. So that, I think, that slowing down is probably a good thing in a way. And I do want to ask you this as well, since we're talking about, adversity. Do you think every or any adversity is a blessing in disguise?
Well, it is like this, and I keep saying this, that adversity can be made into a blessing in disguise.
Right.
If you approach it the right way.
Right.
So, and that is very important. So you need to have what I call a growth mindset. If you have a growth mindset, any adversity will be an opportunity for you.
Right. No, that's a fantastic way to look at it. And thank you for putting that so simply that somebody like me can understand it. I want to go back to the point where we were talking about your family and how they were an excellent support system for you. But obviously it was a struggle for them as well, right? Because it was a huge change that they were also getting accustomed to. What was their journey like? How did they maneuver this crisis?
For my wife, it was just a huge amount of extra responsibilities that came to her. Apart from having to be the key breadwinner of the family,
right.
She also had to do a lot of physical things which normally I would have done. And so that was a lot more taxing for her. What I did was I took on a lot of responsibility in terms of bringing up the children.
Right.
The softer aspects of it, I would spend time in telling them stories, teaching them. I used to teach them all the subjects and help them with all kinds of doubts and basically the value education for them by telling them stories or recounting instances from our lives, etc. So I took that on, but my wife took the brunt of this entire thing. And as far as my children are concerned, there have been instances where they have gone through a lot of worry for me. For example, when I went for the treatment to Chicago, the clinical trial has had a probability of mortality. So I could die during that treatment. And somehow I think my kids figured it out. Maybe we were talking in front of them or whatever. I think they didn't figure out that I might die, but they figured out it was a dangerous treatment that I'm going for.
Okay.
And I remember when I was leaving for the airport, my daughter started crying about 3 hours before that, and she just didn't stop crying. And I know that both of them have gone through that bit of trauma of having this happen. And I was always very conscious that the way I handle this situation, or the way me and my wife, the way we handle this situation, is going to have deep impact on their psyche and the way they grow up as adults.
Yeah.
And which is one of the reasons, and they are the ones who actually made me what I am in a sense, which is one of the reasons I never let any ball drop, or never let my shoulders droop. I always ensured that I had a smile on my face. I always ensured that I would tell them a funny joke, whatever. So I think just as much as, and I think I've seen some of the way they react to some downturns or setbacks in their lives, and they just breeze through them with the right attitude. And I think in many ways this is possibly a blessing in disguise.
Wow, that's
just a blessing in disguise.
That is fantastic. I think that's such an amazing way to look at life, because it's obviously going to throw a curveball every now and then, and we're just going to have to deal with it. But that's, I think, a lesson or a value system that you've imparted is amazing, and it's going to last them a lifetime. It's incredible. I do want to ask you one more thing. Throughout this journey, what has been your most memorable moment or moments?
I mean, there have been actually literally hundreds. Huh? So every time I beat one of the targets I keep for myself, it would be a memorable moment. But the most memorable, maybe one of them was when I gave my first talk, a keynote address in a corporate.
Right. And
I could feel the audience getting so happy listening to me, They were like clapping, and they're like, at the end of it, many of them came and mobbed me. So I knew that I had made a difference in their lives.
Right.
And I realized that is the new aim that I have. So that epiphany that this is something I can do. This is something which will add value to so many people, and at the same time make me so happy.
That's incredible.
That moment was, I think, and it was in a company called SunGuard, and I was called to give a talk, and I completely gave an extempore talk. I had not at all.
Yeah.
I talked through about my life, and then they just loved it. So, yeah, that was a moment, I think.
That's amazing. But did you ever think you're going to actually become an author and a motivational speaker? Ever?
So somewhere I knew that I might become an author, because as a kid, my mother would tell me this, that when I was 7, 8, etc., I would suddenly, when I used to stay in a nice rural setting, there was a massive 2-acre field around our house, and so I would play in the garden and in the farm. And suddenly I would run back to the house saying that, "No, poetry is coming.
Okay.
I would write down this 10 lines. But I never thought I would become an author in English, because I studied in a Malayalam medium school throughout.
Okay.
And I had not spoken even one sentence in English till I came to college.
Okay.
And in IIT, in fact, when I joined there, it was a bit of a cultural shock for me, because I could speak only in English, and I had never done that before. I was very scared, actually. So yeah, I never thought I would write a book in English.
Okay. And we spoke about the memorable moment. What was your most challenging moment or moments through this journey?
So after I got sacked from my organization, it took me about 3 hours to get back to I can do anything. Okay. So that 3 hours was very difficult. I mean, I went through, I was feeling so dejected that I knew I had put in so much of effort for this organization. I've given 100% even when I was feeling 10%. And I was feeling really, really down. But within the 3 hours, I started then calling a network of friends. And I knew that I couldn't get another job because I could barely walk, Nobody would give me a job. But I knew that I had some strong, major strengths, which is basically my experience, my ability, my mental abilities, and my drive. So I called up a few friends who had started startup companies, and I by the end of the day, I had two offers in hand, actually.
Okay. Okay.
And then I was all prepared. So I took on one of those roles as a consultant to a startup, because that sort of suited me, because I would work for some 3-4 hours and then come back and work on my health and that kind of stuff.
Right.
I went there for a couple of days. And the third day, as I was getting into my car, I tripped and fell. And I couldn't walk. So because my ankle was hurting like crazy. I was taken to the hospital and the doctor said, you have a fracture. Now, if I have a fracture, I knew that I would not be able to then continue that role, because unlike other people who could use a crutch and then go even if with a fracture, I couldn't, because my balance was already so poor. There was no way I could hop on one foot and go.
Yeah.
And that moment, it was the worst moment for me. I sat there in the hospital and I started crying. And I started crying because of all that I've been going through, one after the other. And I started crying for all the problems I'm putting on my wife's head. And she was standing next to me. And I turned to her and said, baby, I'm so sorry that I'm giving you all this. Please don't leave me, okay? And she was so angry with me for saying that.
Of course.
How am I going to be crazy?
Why would you say something like that? Don't leave me.
I was feeling so guilty about what I was putting her through.
I'm sure.
Came out.
Yeah, I can imagine. I think I've done that a lot to my husband when I tell him, listen, you can leave me if you have to. I give you enough pain.
Yeah, I know you had a fantastic life also. You've gone through so much of difficulties and come up.
I don't know how fantastic it is, but sure, getting there. Sure. But a lot to learn, still a lot to learn. Tell me something, RG, do you hold any regrets?
Actually, no, not at all. I mean, this is one thing I have trained my mind never to feel any regrets.
Okay.
I know what I am today is accumulation of every single experience I've gone through. When if you take off one of those experiences, however negative or bad it is, it would be a different person. And I think every one of those experiences have added to me, to the breadth that I have.
And if you look back today to the life and the journey that you've had, how does it make you feel?
Awesome. I'm the most positive person I've met in my life. I'm the happiest person I've met in my life. And obviously, I've had a fantastic life. Otherwise, I wouldn't be feeling that, right?
And would you have it any other way?
No, I wouldn't. That's what I said. I don't have any regrets in life.
That's amazing. That's, I think, a fantastic thing to say and to live each day of your life. Very quickly, I want to go back to the point where you said that, you were sacked and you were obviously completely down and out and you were looking for other opportunities, but you knew that nobody else would hire you in that condition. So from that point in your life to today, when you work with so many organizations as a motivational speaker, do you see any difference in the way organizations have begun to embrace diversity, or have they become any different today? Or is it just an eyewash? I want to be very upfront asking you this, because I come from a corporate background and I want to understand how true are they to their value system when they say that, they are a diverse and inclusive organization.
There has been positive steps. Definitely things have started to change.
Okay.
But it is still scratching the surface. There's a long way to go.
Right.
And inclusivity of disabilities, inclusivity of gender, inclusivity of general differences, class, this. I mean, there's so many things which are still not nowhere near what is desirable.
It's not being addressed enough, you're saying?
Yeah.
Right. Okay. I want to now get into actually a fun, lighter, section, and then we'll close the conversation. So I'll ask you one word, and you have to tell me what is the first thing that comes to your mind when you hear the following. Yeah.
Okay.
Failure.
Success. Okay, success is what came to my mind. Really. Sorry.
Okay. Okay. Money.
Good to have.
Of course. Happiness.
Absolutely essential.
Ouch.
Oops.
Okay. Disability.
Difficulty.
Life.
Awesome.
Resilience.
Necessary. Very necessary.
Politics.
How?
That says it all. Diversity.
The most important thing.
And family.
I love them.
That's amazing. Just want to close by asking you this one question. What are your future plans? What next?
The immediate one is what I'm focusing on now is the launch of the next book, which is called Active Parenting.
Okay.
It will be out in the next 4 months. And so much of research and thought has gone into putting that together. The one thing I've realized is that the way to touch 1 million lives positively is to help parents bring up their children with phenomenal qualities. And the impact of that, the ripple impact of that would be so much, right? I mean, if kids grow up to be great adults, their kids will become as great or better adults, and the whole society can have a strong positive impact.
Yeah, no,
so
absolutely.
Rather than giving talks to adults, help them bring up kids really well. That'll be even better.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think there's more hope from the future generations than our generations now, because I mean, for us, it's very difficult to change, right? For future generations, yes, you can still mold them and there's still hope there. So, and I, being a mother of a son, I think hold even greater responsibility to, give him a good value system where he respects women in particular. So that's very, very important. Just a closing, remark from you. How would you describe yourself in one word?
Awesome.
Oh, you are indeed. And this conversation has been amazing. Absolutely, especially for me as a person, a lot of self-reflection I think I'm going to get into after finishing this podcast, because there's still a lot to learn and still a lot of pieces to pick up and move on. I think I'm probably somewhere still holding back at, what had happened and why it had happened. I never questioned why, but I still go back, have flashbacks as to, oh God, it could have been worse, oh God, this, that, whatever. So that obviously needs to change. That cycle of thinking needs to break, because it's obviously not helping me or anybody else at in my family. So thank you so much. This has really been a great conversation, and I hope whoever's listening to us is able to pick up something positive to take away. Thanks so much.
Diksha, thank you so much. And I must tell you that you're awesome. Okay, the way you have turned this entire thing around and have started focusing on how to convert this into a success, I think you're awesome. Okay, so don't undersell yourself. You're amazing.
Thank you so much. I do need to hear this more, because I obviously don't believe when somebody tells me that. But thank you so much. It's been amazing, RG.
Thank you.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye-bye.